Hey guys, Any Figure Therapy here today, and we're gonna be talking about kind of like a newer figure that actually just released this month, or I guess last month in Japan, but it is the Revoltech Junk Warrior from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Now, this one is actually a really, off the bat, I'm gonna tell you it's a really fun figure, and I love Yu-Gi-Oh! Or like the first main 3 series of Yu-Gi-Oh! So honestly, this was kind of just like a must-buy for me. I do absolutely love that Revoltech is doing like the Ace Monsters, at least for 5Ds and GX. And then, of course, there's also like SH Figure Arts or SH Monster Arts that's also doing Stardust Dragon. So we're definitely seeing like a golden age of Yu-Gi-Oh! Merchandise that's existing now. And yeah, so this is just part of that little piece of cake. So first off, let's talk about the box here. It has this really great image of Junk Warrior, very similar to the actual card. I think I do have the card laying around somewhere, but I have no idea where it is right now. It says Junk Warrior there, Revoltech here. This is kind of like the new style of Revoltech box. I'll show you guys what I mean in just a second. And there are like a lot of good product shots. It shows you all the images of the figure itself, some licensing stickers here, as well as some of the accessories it comes with. It does not come with a lot, to be honest. It is also a fairly pricey figure, but of course some of that could be justified via the license or just the sculpt itself. Now, the only cool thing that I think is fun to note about more recent Revoltech boxes is that instead of having a flap here, it actually has this weird like L-shaped flap. So it does this. So like, you know, this is kind of like an example of what I mean. But so this is a snail shell box, and typically most boxes nowadays have this kind of flap. But I think it's just kind of fun that they've kind of found their own in terms of packaging experience. So there's that. And then of course, talking about the actual figure, so here I have it. Let's go ahead and tilt down a little bit. So here's the actual figure. Whoop. Here's the actual figure itself. So basically, here is Junk Warrior in all of his cool junkness. Now he does come in this clamshell box, which we will talk about in a second. We should just kind of go over accessories just because, of course, there isn't too much, which is a bit disappointing because this figure does retail for about, I know it's definitely over 100 or 10,000 yen, which is, I mean, roughly right now the conversion isn't too bad at around like maybe like $70 max. But of course, like if you were to do 1-to-1, it would be about $100. And honestly, when you think about what you can buy with $100, it kind of comes down to whether or not you like Yu-Gi-Oh! That much. And I feel like it's a little bit tricky to have that kind of situation where you don't have any other option in the market, so hence you do have to pay the money if you do like the series. Now, of course, you could just be like, no, I don't want to pay it and just like kind of forget about this release, but I really sincerely don't think anybody else is going to do Junk Warrior. So I am kind of glad. I'm still very grateful that, you know, Revoltech has picked it up, and we do have this figure now. So let's go ahead and check out the accessories. So he does come with a multitude of hands, but in addition to that, he does come with these clear parts, which are actually for the bottom of the feet. So his feet aren't flat. They're actually like these ice skates, and you go ahead and just kind of put them in here. I think it's this way. So once you put them in there, it's actually so he can stand without the use of the stand. But you know, who the heck uses that? Honestly, he's always flying in the air in the anime, so it's kind of like there's no meaning to have these like pieces. But it's cool that they included it, so I'm glad about that. Now he does come with since his arms are kind of different sizes, so he does come with some interesting pairs of hands. So he does have 2 closed fists, one for each side, and then on all the hands, or at least for the closed fist, this part does articulate. The rest of them, they do rotate just very little bit, but there kind of is no meaning for them to articulate at all, I guess. So that's kind of just trying to see if I can focus on that. Yeah. Okay, it's not focusing too great, but you guys get the picture. Ultimately, like, the coloring is great. I love it. And then moving on to his other arm, which is, he does have a kind of splayed open hand as well as a relaxed hand, and that goes for his big hand too. So right now I have him with the closed fist and the relaxed hand. So there's that. He does also come with a Revoltech stand as well as like a cradle piece, but he does peg right into the back of his little junk engine. So just kind of looking into articulation now. So real quick, he does have a ton of articulation, which is great, and I love that. So the head is actually on a double ball joint, or a Revoltech joint. Now, I'll go ahead and go into this maybe like a little later, but one big gripe that I had about Revoltech is that they kind of have stopped using Revoltech joints. So he's super articulated. However, all of his joints just use like pin joints. So they're no longer using this very satisfying trademarked Revoltech joint. So here I have like this super old Gurren Lang, or the Gurren, and you can hear all these joints, and it's not really compromising on the looseness of the figure. It's a very solid figure, but just hearing that, and I don't know why they have decided to stop using for most of their releases, stop using those clicky joints. Sorry, just take that off. But yeah, it's kind of strange. Now, of course, like for me, when I compare it to like Neos later on, it just does somewhat bother me because it doesn't feel as solid as it would need to be for a $100 figure, especially from a company that prides itself on these special joints. So just kind of like a side tangent, but yeah. So the head can rotate. It's on a ball joint. It's actually it's a double fake Revoltech joint, I guess. So he does have tons of great movement. This scarf part is just kind of floating. And then there's also these two large scarf parts, which if they were on Revoltech joints, then they would be much more stable. But as you can see, they're a little bit floppy, but they are pretty big, so kind of benefit the doubt there. These shoulder parts are also on these kind of like universal joints. You can actually see one right there starting to split, but they do rotate and go up and down. They are at an angle, so there's that. And then, of course, you do have the shoulders. So there's actually a butterfly joint in the shoulder that goes in and out, and as well as up and down. And then there is a hinge here, as well as a rotational there. There's no rotation at the bicep, but since this is really small joint, which is part of the design, basically that rotates there. And then, of course, this is the cool part, is they actually broke up the sculpt right here to give you that additional bend. That way you can get a full 180 at the elbow. And of course, like his hands also have that same joint, so it's all kind of like a similar joint where it's like just a universal joint. Now the torso, it's actually supposed to have a different style of joint, but I broke it on accident trying to open it up, and then so I just added a Revoltech joint in there, so you can kind of see the clickiness and the stability of that. Now he does also have two joints in the back for this little engine part, and then also this arm has basically the same articulation. And then of course it goes down to here. So at here he has a nice big ball joint. You can definitely feel it at the hips. And then right here at the hip to thigh connection, he does have a joint that goes out about that far and then goes in about that far, as well as rotates back and forth. Now what I love about this is that you could see that there's a beautiful sculpt right here for that like flowing fabric material. But then how they did that is actually they just broke up the sculpt right here, and it's just a ball joint. So you do get some arcing back and forth, as well as some rotation here at the thigh. So he does have a double hinged knee, which does feel incredibly solid, which I do love. So he gets a very nice, a little bit over 90, but that's just due to the design. And there's that. And then of course, there is a ball joint here at the ankle armor, as well as a single joint right here at the ankle. So yeah, ultimately, in terms of articulation, he's super great. Like honestly, it's really fun to play around with him. In the anime, you always see him do sorts of like crazy poses and stuff, and he's always like punching. I think like there's like a one classic pose where he's like this. Yeah, like something like that, where he's about to like punch something, and it being like, I'd say like Yusei's like second ace monster next to Stardust, I feel like we definitely do see a lot of Junk Warrior. So it's definitely pretty fun to pose him around. Now, if you do have the Yusei Fudo Revoltech, here I have him with some other of the Monster Collection items that Kyoto has put out. So this is the DX version of Yusei, who does come with the Junk Warrior with like the winking face, and these other figures like the Turbo Synchron and the Resonator, the Tuning Resonator, come separately, but they all just kind of look great together, especially with Yusei. Now I wish instead of him I got Quillbolt, but they are blind boxes, so and they're a bit expensive, so just something to note. Now, you know, them all together, they look great. Honestly, I love that he's in scale with Yusei, and it definitely makes me feel like if we got his like bike, that'd be really sick. And yeah, so ultimately, like, it's a really fun figure. Now, of course, like also comparing it to another relatively expensive Yu-Gi-Oh! Revoltech figure. Here I have Elemental Hero Neos from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Now, like kind of this is like a perfect example. So Neos here is, I believe, like around a 9,000 yen figure. Now, you can see there is like some looseness in some parts, but it's mostly just due to his joints not being Revoltech joints. And that's kind of like when I first bought this, I was a little bit confused because I expected everything to just start clicking, but then instead you can definitely feel this looseness. Now, of course, it'll hold the pose, but it doesn't feel as satisfying as it should feel, like, because it's more of like a figure arts thing at that point. And even figure arts their joint tolerances are a little bit better. Now, of course, going back to the comparison, like these look great together. I love that the monsters are bigger because they should be bigger, and also like they definitely feel like more than just an accessory to the actual figure of like the human characters. But yeah, and of course they're super fun to play with. Even though sometimes, you know, you maybe won't see the monsters do a ton of action poses in the anime, but yeah. So ultimately, just kind of looking into focusing back on Junk Warrior, it's a great figure. I do think it's a bit expensive. However, I could totally see just fans of Yu-Gi-Oh! Loving this piece. I mean, Junk Warrior is such an iconic figure, or iconic card, I mean, and he does so much in the anime. He basically like finishes off Jack in the last episode, so it's very like fitting to have such a like really nicely sculpted version of Junk Warrior. Now, of course, like the SRP is a bit high, I will admit that. Now, but then, you know, having it all together really does add to this whole like, oh wow, like it's cool to see that Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds has kind of made a soft return after like so many years. So that being said, that's pretty much it for this review. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.